Morning guys, welcome to the Dent Men Training Centre. My name is Aaron Hill, I am the main trainer here at the Dent Men. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to go over, it's effectively what we do on our Saturday morning taster sessions, and also what we do on day one of a 5-day beginner's course. It's what we do in the morning on a 5-day beginner course. And as I say, on our 1-hour taster session on a Saturday generally. So this is our setup here. So we've made a stand for the bonnet. We've picked up a bonnet which we tend to pay sort of around £10 from a scrapyard. Only thing to look out for with your bonnet is you want to make sure your bonnet is steel, not aluminium, and also the darker colour the better. And kind of look out for the paintwork, because obviously if it's had a bad paint job, it's going to be muffled and you're not going to be able to see clearly enough exactly what you're working on the bonnet. So yeah, so that's the first thing. So then you want to get it set up, either ratchet down or use a bungee strap in order to hold it down and keep it nice and secure. So in terms of tooling, so this is the tool setup that we've got here. So we've got this rod here, which is a 24-inch double bend by Ultra Dent. That's the main rod that we'll be using, certainly on the taster session and for most of the beginner's course as well, in fairness. We've got our hammer here, which it's got an adjustable tip. You can change the tips, which is quite handy. In terms of hammers, generally speaking, this is the one that we use day to day. But the most important thing really and truthfully is the weight, because generally with tapping down you tend to let the hammer do the work, so the weight has to be right. And also the face here, you want the surface area to be big enough so that when you connect with your tap down, you know, if you can imagine if you had a small surface area here, connecting with the tap down when you're trying to concentrate on what you're doing becomes a bit of a task. So that's the main thing really to look out for with the hammer. Tap down wise, so this is the tap down that we use. These tips here, sort of all round day-to-day tip. You can get thicker heads on the tips, and you can also get much finer, thinner heads on the tips. But that's a good standard all-round tap down, which is what we tend to use most of the time here at the Dent Men. So, and then we've got our line board here. So again, this is a pretty standard line board. You can get lines with different colours on for working on different colour vehicles. You can get different thicknesses of lines which are better. Basically the difference in thickness give you different levels of detail. So fairly thick lines give you sort of a basic detail, and then a thinner line, which sometimes you can get on the flip side of the line board, will give you a little bit more detail, which will make more sense when we progress through the video, and also when we move on to some of the more advanced stuff on the course later on. So so that's our line board. So the final thing then is the chain here, which is it is a PDR setup chain, but in fairness you can pretty much make them yourself. But we'll go over what you'll use them for. It's not a sort of everyday tool by any stretch, but certainly for the taster content it's something that you guys are going to need. So let me just quickly check that the video is working so I'm not wasting my time. We're good. So, right, so what we're going to do, so as I say, the taster session is what we're going to be doing here this morning, and it's the first thing that we crack on with on a PDR course. The hardest thing and the first thing really to master with PDR is locating the tip of the rod. So this here, the tip. I mean, generally speaking, when you're working on a vehicle, your tip's going to be up a wheel arch, or down a door, or through a rear light, for example, and you're not really going to be able to see exactly where the tip is. Obviously in this situation here, we've got the luxury in that we can literally look underneath and see exactly where the tip is, but like I say, in most scenarios on a vehicle you're not going to have that luxury. So locating your tip is the first and the most important thing to do. So secondly, it's using the lines here. So the lines here are our eyes basically. So they show us exactly what's going on underneath the panel, Again, I'll be able to show you that in a bit more detail slightly later on, but they are the two things really that you need to master initially. So getting used to knowing exactly where your tip is, and being able to read the lines in order to locate where the tip is. So, okay. So first things first, so how you hold the rod. So I'm personally right-handed. I would tend to have my right hand here on the handle like this. Two reasons really. You've got a bit more strength with that hand because that's the hand you tend to work with most often. And also it gives you a bit more control. You know, you've got a bit more control. Your hand-eye coordination's often better with the hand you use most often. So that's what I would do with my right hand there in that position on the handle. Second hand, so my left hand, I would tend to have my thumb and my finger round the end of the tip here. And this effectively is just going to be pushed up onto the underside of the panel like that. Again, two reasons. One reason is to stop it from slipping out, because if it slips out you can cause quite a nasty high spot along the outside of the panel there. So that's one good reason to hold it and give yourself that stability, just to keep it nice and firm there. And secondly, if you do need to make minor adjustments, it's a lot easier to move like that with the control of your second hand, rather than just kind of swinging around and hitting and guessing really effectively. So that just gives you that extra bit of control there. So yeah, so that's how we hold the rod. So the next bit of kit we're going to use is the chain here. So the chain purely, so what we'll do is we'll hook that in there. And all it's really doing is giving us some leverage. So like I say, in most scenarios, if you're on a wheel arch, for example, you'll be levering off of the tyre. Down the door, you'll be levering off of your window guard or an impact bar within the door. Or through a rear light, you'd be levering off of the sort of metal structure within the rear quarter panel there, for example. But certainly on a bonnet is a good example whereby we haven't got much in the way that we can lever off of. So we feed through the top eye of the chain here, and that is purely just to give us something to lever off, as you can see there. So, all right. In terms of where you hang your chain, in this situation, because it's a scrap bonnet, what we've done is we've just drilled a small hole under there just to give us something to hook onto. Obviously, in a real life customer vehicle situation, that's not something we're about to do. So in that situation, you basically just use one of the many manufacturer's holes that there are underneath the bonnet. It may mean that you haven't got a nice perfect line up to where you're hanging your chain and onto the dent. It might mean you're coming off at a slight angle, but sometimes that's your only option. So, okay, so that's the rod, that's the chain. We're all set up, we're ready to go. So I feed through there. And what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to move the camera in a second, but what you want to do is get yourself down into this position so that you can see onto the bonnet and then through to the lines so that you can see the reflection of the lines in the panel, okay? I'm just going to grab the camera and show you that now. Okay, so what we want to see, guys, here, I'm going to do it one hand, so it's not going to be the most controlled thing you've ever seen, but if you can see just there where those lines are pinching up, yeah? So as I apply pressure, those lines are getting really, really pinched up and really skinny, yeah? They're sort of forming like an arrow pointing exactly where the tip of the rod is, okay? And so that is exactly what we're looking for. That is, so I'll move off to the right there slightly, pinching, and it's showing me where my tip is. Off to the right a bit further, same again, it's pinching and showing me where my tip is, okay? So that's exactly what we're looking for, and that is telling us exactly where that tip is, all right? Cool, okay, I'll stick the camera back up, 2 secs. Cool, right, happy days. So, a way to see the tip a little bit easier, I always say it's a good idea to close one of your eyes. It doesn't necessarily matter which one, just kind of the one that feels more natural to close. And what you want to do is close that one eye And while you're applying the pressure on the rod, on the underside of the bonnet, while looking in the lines, you want to just rock your head up and down like that with one eye shut. And what that will do is that will show you more clearly exactly what's going on in the lines, and you'll see that the lines kind of flick over the top of that high spot. That's why you rock your head, so that the lines move up and down through the high spot. And the closing the eye thing, I always think it's better to close one eye, because then you're literally just working off of one eye. There's not two eyes trying to make sense of what's going on with the lines, especially if you've got slightly poor eyesight. I generally think with one eye, you know, you're working from a level playing field, if you like, so that's always a good move. So, all right. So task number one then. So once you've got used to knowing exactly where the tip is, what I want you to do in the first exercise is, okay, so again, I'm going to grab the camera. So the first exercise, guys, is, as you can see here, I've used a chalk pen to put a series of circles on the bonnet, starting with one big one and getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So the idea is I want you to navigate your way. I'll just quickly give you an example here. So I'm going to start with that big circle on the left there, the first one. So navigate your way into that big circle. So you can see there the lines are pinching up nicely right in the middle of that big circle. And once you're in the circle, the idea is I just want you to leave yourself a little high spot, yeah? So I'll give you an example of the high spot I want you to leave. So up the back there, if I leave a nice little high spot, just like that. Yeah, so you can see there, just here, you see that where it's flicking. So if I move the camera up and down there, you can see that there's a slight little pinch. I've left a high spot where I've pushed and the dents come outwards. And that's exactly what I want you to do. Obviously, I want you to do it in each of these circles. As I say, start with the biggest circle first, leave a high spot, then move on to the next one and keep going all the way along until this little fella here. And just as I say, leave yourself a nice little high spot. So that high spot there is a perfect example of what you need to leave. So I'll give you an example of something that you don't want to do. So if you look just here, right there, you can see that there's quite a nasty high spot. So it's something that is now technically a bit overstretched, which means that it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to get rid of. The one that we want you to leave is this tiny little diddy one here. So just clear enough to see that there's a little high spot. Something like that is just too overstretched. So you just want to get used to the pressure to start with. And as I say, get yourself into the circle, leave yourself a nice little gentle high spot. The main reason is so that after you've done the task, you can look at all the circles and see where you managed to get yourself into. And obviously the ideal situation is to leave a tiny little high spot right in the middle of the circles there. So, all right. And as I say, don't push too hard so that you leave a really sharp high spot. Just leave yourself a nice little gentle one there, okay? Cool, right, I'm going to pop the camera back again.